"You're Barren," he said, "and I, Alpha Renard of the Bloodmoon pack, reject you." Her heart shattered, but the moon watched. That night, the ancient seal broke, the stars burned red, and for the first time in 4,000 years, the air of prophecy stirred within her. Chapter 1. The public rejection. The silence in the great hall of the Bloodmoon pack was a living thing. It was heavy, suffocating, and pressed down on Oriana's shoulders until she felt her spine might snap. It was the night of the moon gathering, the one night a year the Alpha was sworn to declare his Luna. The air was thick with the scent of pine, roasted meat, and the metallic tang of anxiety. Hundreds of wolves shifted into their human forms, packed the raftered hall. Their eyes were all on her. And on him. Alpha Renard stood before the moonstone, a towering man whose presence demanded obedience. His shadow, cast by the roaring fire pit, swallowed her whole. He was her mate. The moon goddess had decreed it 2 summers ago, a bond that snapped into place with the force of a tidal wave, leaving her breathless and him complicated. He was all hard lines and coiled power, his black hair pulled back from a face that looked carved from mountain rock. His eyes, the color of burnt gold, were fixed on her. She tried to smile. She was Oriana, a gentle Omega, a healer. Her hands, usually steady as they ground herbs or stitched wounds, were trembling. She had been his mate, his lover, and she prayed his future Luna. But she had failed. 2 years. 2 years of desperate prayers to the goddess. 2 years of herbs and tonics. 2 years of empty, agonizing moons. She was barren. Oriana. His voice was not a lover's. It was the voice of an alpha. Cold, final, and absolute. She flinched. The pack watched. She could feel their pity, their scorn. Omegas were soft, nurturing. They were meant for pups. And for 4,000 years, no Omega in the Bloodmoon line had ever borne an alpha's heir. She was supposed to be different. She was his fated mate. She wasn't. She was just another failure. "You have served this pack with honor," Renard continued, his voice echoing in the dreadful quiet. "As our finest healer, you have mended our warriors and cared for our young." He was using his alpha tone, the one that made her wolf want to roll over, to submit, to show her throat. She fought it, digging her nails into her palms. "Don't do this," she begged him silently, the mate bond a live wire of pain between them. "Please, Renard, don't do this here." He took a step toward her. His scent, winter pine and cold stone, enveloped her, a cruel reminder of the nights she had slept safely in his arms. He stopped an inch away. His breath was hot on her lips. She could see the war in his eyes. His wolf, the great black beast inside him, was raging, clawing at his insides, begging him to claim her, to protect her. But the alpha was stronger. "An alpha's first duty," he said, his voice dropping, "is to his future, to the continuation of his line. The pack must have an heir." A single tear escaped her, tracing a cold path down her cheek. "Renard?" she whispered, a broken sound. "I, Alpha Renard of the Bloodmoon pack," he declared, turning his face from her to address the crowd. The words were a death sentence. "Hereby sever the bond of the fated. I reject Oriana, Omega of the healer's den, as my mate." The breath left her lungs. The world went silent. The bond, it didn't just break, it tore. It felt like he had reached into her chest and ripped her heart out with his bare hands. A scream built in her throat, but she swallowed it down. She would not give them her shame. "And I," he continued, turning to the crowd, "claim a new Luna, one who will secure our future." He held out his hand. From the crowd, a she-wolf emerged, Neris, a high-ranking gamma, all sharp angles and ambition. Her red hair was braided with copper wire, and her smile was a slash of triumph. She walked past Oriana, her shoulder deliberately brushing hers, sending a fresh wave of pain through the broken bond. Neris took Renard's hand. "I claim Neris as my chosen Luna," Renard announced. "We will be bonded under the next full moon." The pack, hesitant at first, erupted in a roar of approval. They needed an heir. They needed strength. They did not need a barren Omega. Oriana was invisible, a ghost in the room that had been her home. The pain was a physical thing now, a white-hot agony spreading from her chest to her limbs. Her wolf was howling, a sound of death and despair that only she and Renard could hear. He met her gaze one last time. His face was a mask of stone, but his eyes were screaming, "Forgive me." She gave him nothing. She turned her back straight and walked. She walked through the crowd that parted for her, their faces a blur of pity and relief. She walked out of the great hall, away from the fire and the celebration. She walked past her small healer's den, her herbs and comforts. She didn't stop until the packed earth of the village turned to the soft, damp loam of the forest floor. The moment the trees obscured her from the pack's view, her legs gave out. The agony of the rejection hit her like a physical blow. She crumpled to her knees, clutching her stomach, and finally, devastatingly, let out the scream she'd been holding. It was the sound of a soul tearing in two. She was no one. She was nothing. Just a broken, barren Omega, cast out into the cold. Chapter 2. The Curse of the Bloodmoon. The great hall felt colder, despite the roaring fire. Renard stood with Neris at his side. Her hand was cold in his. His wolf, the massive alpha beast that was his other half, was silent. It hadn't stirred since Oriana had walked out. It had curled up in the back of his mind, a low, grieving presence. He felt empty. A strong choice, Alpha, a warrior said, slapping him on the back. Neris will give us strong pups. A Gamma she-wolf agreed, eyeing Neris with approval. Renard nodded, his face a mask of command. He had done his duty. He had saved his pack. The Bloodmoon line would not die with him. He looked at Neris. She was strong, yes. Her bloodline was pure. But when he looked at her, he felt nothing. No spark, no destiny. Just the cold, practical reality of an alliance. He had traded his soul for an heir. Later, in his private study, the weight of his choice pressed in. The room still smelled faintly of her, of lavender and sage. She had been here just last night, tending to the cut on his arm, her small, warm hands so gentle. A knock echoed. Enter. The door opened to reveal Alden, the pack's eldest elder. He was ancient, his fur more gray than black, his eyes milky with cataracts, but seeing more than any wolf in the pack. He leaned heavily on a gnarled staff. So it is done, Alden rasped, his voice like dry leaves. It is, Renard said, pouring 2 glasses of mead. He handed one to the elder. I did what was necessary. The pack needs an heir. Oriana, she could not provide one. Alden didn't take the drink. He stared into the fire. You speak of the curse as if you understand it, boy. I understand it, Renard snapped, his patience thin. 4,000 years ago, the first Luna, Yvain, defied the moon goddess. She was fated to an Omega male but rejected him for a powerful warrior. The goddess was enraged. She cursed the Bloodmoon line, decreeing that no Omega would ever bear an Alpha's heir. You speak the legend, Alden said, turning his cloudy eyes on Renard. But you do not hear the words. The pack has twisted the tale to suit its own fear. What fear? It's fact. We have not had an Omega Luna in 4 millennia. They are barren to our line. It is a curse of infertility. No, Alden said, his voice sharp. It is not a curse of infertility. It is a curse of rejection. The goddess did not make Omegas barren. She cursed the Alpha line for its arrogance. Renard froze, the glass halfway to his lips. The prophecy was not that an Omega cannot bear an heir, Alden continued, stepping closer, his old voice ringing with sudden power. The prophecy was that the line would weaken, that it would wither, that it would fail, until the day an Alpha was strong enough to choose his fated Omega over pride. Until he was strong enough to break the cycle of rejection Yvain started. The blood drained from Renard's face. What are you saying? I am saying that for 4,000 years, Alphas of this pack have been fated to Omegas, and every single time they have cast them aside for stronger bloodlines. They have repeated Yvain's sin over and over. The goddess has been waiting for an Alpha to honor her choice. Oriana, Renard whispered, the name tasting like ash. She was my fated mate. The goddess chose her for me. And you, Alden said, his disappointment a physical blow, chose a Gamma warrior. You chose pride. You chose fear. You repeated the sin, Renard. You didn't just reject Oriana. You rejected the goddess's one true offering. Renard slammed the glass down, mead sloshing over the rim. She was barren. 2 years, Alden, 2 years. Was she? The elder asked softly. Or was the goddess simply waiting? Waiting for you to prove your faith? Waiting for you to choose her, publicly and absolutely before granting the blessing? A test of faith you just spectacularly failed. The room spun. Renard gripped the edge of his desk. His wolf was now howling, a storm of self-loathing and agony. We rejected her. We rejected our mate. We broke her. We broke us. What have I done? He breathed, the alpha mask crumbling. The second part of the prophecy, Alden said, his voice grim. The part we do not speak of. Renard looked up, dread coiling in his gut. The line will weaken, and then the plague will come. A plague born of a broken fate, a sickness of the soul that rots the body. And when it comes, only the blood of the true heir can cure it. The true heir? The child born of the union that was meant to be. The child of the Alpha and his true, fated Omega. The child that you just cast into the wilderness. Renard's heart stopped. No, she's barren. You pray to the goddess she is, Alden said, turning and walking slowly to the door. Because if she is not, if by some miracle she was carrying your heir, you have just damned us all. The door clicked shut, leaving Renard alone in the suffocating silence, the scent of lavender and sage accusing him with every breath. Chapter 3. The Omega's Exile. The forest was a nightmare of thorns and shadows. Oriana ran. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to get away. The pain of the broken bond was a living creature, a wolf with claws and fangs tearing at her insides. Every step was agony. Every breath was a shard of glass. Her wolf, her gentle Omega self, was whimpering, wanting to lie down, to curl up, to die. He doesn't want us, he cast us out. We are nothing. No, Oriana forced herself to think, pushing through a tangle of blackberry vines that ripped at her simple tunic. I am a healer. I am... She was nothing. She stumbled, her ankle twisting on a wet rock, and fell hard onto the forest floor. She lay there, face pressed into the damp earth, the scent of moss and decay filling her nostrils. It smelled like failure. He called me Barren. The word echoed, Barren, 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 an empty vessel, a failed she-wolf. She cried then, not the loud, keening scream from before, but silent, scalding tears that soaked the leaves beneath her. She cried for the mate who had looked at her with such love, only to break her for ambition. She cried for the pups she would never have, the life she would never lead. A twig snapped. Oriana shot up, her heart hammering. Her senses, dulled by pain, flared to life. She tasted the air. Rogue. Not pack. A lone wolf, male, drawn by the scent of her distress. A lone Omega, especially one wounded and reeking of rejection, was an easy target. She scrambled to her feet, ignoring the throb in her ankle. She ran again, fueled by a new terror. She was a healer, not a fighter. If he caught her, she wouldn't stand a chance. The forest grew thicker, the trees ancient and vast. She pushed deeper into the wild heart of the mountains, territory her pack rarely ventured into. The rogue's scent was getting closer. She could hear him now, his heavy paws crashing through the underbrush. She burst through a curtain of thick ivy and stopped dead. A waterfall. It wasn't large, but it was powerful, crashing down a sheer rock face into a foaming turquoise pool. It was a dead end. No, 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 no. She turned her back to the roaring water as the rogue wolf emerged from the trees. He was huge, scarred, and his human form was barely contained. His eyes were yellow and hungry. A gift from the goddess, he sneered, his voice a low growl. A soft, broken Omega. All for me. He lunged. Oriana didn't think. She dodged, slipping on the slick moss. Her hand shot out to steady herself against the rock wall, and went through it. Through the ivy, behind the waterfall. She fell backward into a dark, narrow space. The rogue, confused, slammed into the rock face where she had been. Oriana scrambled backward on her hands and knees. She was in a cave. A dry, dark tunnel hidden completely by the waterfall and the ivy. She heard the rogue sniffing, snarling, frustrated. He pawed at the curtain of water, but the noise and the force of it must have masked her scent. After a long, agonizing minute, she heard him howl in frustration and storm off, his footsteps fading. She was safe. She lay on the cold stone floor, her body trembling with adrenaline and grief. The cave was deep. She crept further in, away from the roaring water, until she was in a large, silent chamber. A small fissure in the ceiling, high above, let in a single pale shaft of moonlight. It illuminated a cavern that was perfect. It was dry, sheltered, and completely hidden. This would be her new home, her tomb. She spent days there, a ghost in the stone. She foraged for berries and edible roots when her hunger became too much, always moving like a shadow, terrified of the rogue. But a new strange sickness was creeping over her. She chalked it up to the broken bond. The pain had subsided from an inferno to a dull, throbbing ache, a permanent cold spot in her chest. But this was different. It was nausea, a rolling, powerful wave of sickness that gripped her every morning, leaving her weak and dizzy. She was a healer. She knew the signs. She had seen them in dozens of she-wolves. No. She pressed her trembling hands to her stomach. It couldn't be. It was impossible. He had rejected her. She was barren. The sickness roiled again. She sat in the pale moonlight, filtering into her cave, her mind racing. The herbs, the nausea, the mist. Her blood ran cold. It was impossible. The goddess had cursed Omegas. He had rejected her because she was barren. But as she sat there, a tiny, fluttering sensation, like the wings of a trapped moth, brushed against the inside of her stomach. It wasn't the pain of the bond break. It wasn't hunger. It was life. Oh, goddess. She wasn't barren. She was pregnant. And she was alone, exiled, carrying the child of the Alpha who had tried to destroy her. Chapter 4. The Goddess's Dream. The terror was so profound, it almost eclipsed the grief. Oriana huddled in her cave, her arms wrapped around her midsection. Pregnant. The one thing she had craved more than life itself, the one thing that could have saved her, had come after it was too late. What would Renard do if he knew? He would hunt her down. He would take the pup. He would claim it as the heir he so desperately wanted and leave her to die. Or worse, drag her back and force her to be a wet nurse to her own child, while Neris played the role of mother. The thought was more violating than the rejection. No, she whispered to the darkness. Her voice was hoarse. He will never know. You are mine. That night she fell into a deep, exhausted sleep. But it was not the empty, dreamless sleep of despair. She found herself standing in a field. Not a forest, but an open meadow, bathed in silver light so bright it felt solid. The grass beneath her feet was not green, but the color of starlight. The air hummed with a power that vibrated deep in her bones. A figure stood before her. It was a woman, or the impression of one, woven from moonlight and shadow. She was tall, impossibly so, and her face was a swirl of constellations. This was no mere pack goddess. This was the moon itself, the primal. Oriana fell to her knees, awestruck and terrified. The goddess did not speak. She raised a hand, and the world around Oriana shifted. She saw a vision, a great ancient forest. She saw the first Luna, Yvain, beautiful and proud. She saw a male Omega with kind eyes offering Yvain a pale moonflower. And she saw Yvain laugh, turn her back, and accept the embrace of a brutal, scarred warrior. She felt the goddess's rage. It was not the petty anger of a human, but the cold, vast fury of a celestial body. It was the anger of fate denied. The vision blurred. She heard the goddess's words, not as sound, but as pure knowledge impressed upon her soul. They called it a curse of barrenness. It was a test of faith. The goddess showed her the long line of Bloodmoon alphas, generation after generation, fated to gentle, strong-willed Omegas. And generation after generation, they chose warriors. They chose power. They chose politics. They repeated the sin. They blamed the Omegas for their own faithlessness. They twisted my test into an excuse for their pride. Oriana looked at the goddess, tears streaming down her face. But me, I am just... The goddess's form shimmered. She reached out a hand of light and shadow and placed it on Oriana's stomach. A wave of warmth, pure and divine, flowed into her. It was not the fire of a wolf, but the cool, silver light of the moon. It saturated her, filled the cold, empty void Renard's rejection had left. It healed the tear in her soul. When the light touched her womb, the tiny, fluttering life inside ignited. Oriana gasped, looking down. Through her own skin, she could see a tiny, pulsing silver star. The pack has been barren because it chose power over fate, the goddess's thought echoed. You were the first in 4,000 years whose mate, though a fool, bonded with you at all. He accepted the fated bond, even if his courage failed him. The bond was made, the seed was planted, and I will protect it. The goddess showed her one last vision, a child, a small boy with his father's dark hair and her own gentle eyes. His hand was outstretched, and from his palm shone a silver, crescent moon. He is not just an heir, little healer. He is my chosen, the first true heir, and he will be the pack's salvation, or its end. The vision shattered. Oriana woke with a gasp, the stone of the cave cold against her back. The morning sickness was gone. The agonizing pain of the broken bond was gone. In its place was peace, a cold, clear silver purpose. She placed a hand on her stomach. The fluttering was stronger now, a steady, thrumming pulse of quiet power. She was not a victim. She was not a broken, barren omega. She was a vessel, a protector, the mother of the goddess's own. I will not fail you, she whispered, not to the empty cave, but to the child within. I will protect you from your father. I will protect you from the world. You are not his. You are not mine. You are the moon's. And for the first time since she'd fled, Oriana, the exiled Omega, smiled. Chapter 5. Birth of the True Heir. The wilderness became her partner. The harshness she had feared became her shield. Oriana lived in the hidden cave, its entrance masked by the waterfall, for 5 years. The Omega he had rejected, the soft, trembling healer, was gone. In her place was a woman made of forest shadow and river stone. She learned to hunt with snares, to move without a sound. She used her healer's knowledge to find every edible and medicinal plant for miles. Her wolf, once submissive, became lean, clever, and fiercely protective. The birth had been the hardest. She had been alone, deep in the cave, with only a small fire and her own knowledge. The pain was extraordinary, but the vision of the goddess had given her a strength she didn't know she possessed. When he finally came, he did not cry. He entered the world in a silent rush, his eyes wide open, staring at her. And the moment he took his first breath, the cave was flooded with light. Oriana had stared, weeping, as a perfect silver crescent moon glowed on his tiny palm. It shone for a full minute, a divine brand, before fading to a faint silvery scar. She named him Theron. Hunter, but he was not. He was a creator. Now, Theron was 5. He was a small, serious child, with Renard's midnight black hair and her own soft green eyes. But his eyes held an unnerving ancientness, as if he remembered the 4,000 years of his own prophecy. He was her entire world. Mother, he whispered. Oriana turned. They were in their small clearing, hidden by the waterfall's mist. Theron was kneeling by a small, wounded bird, a sparrow with a broken wing. It's hurt, he said, his small face tight with empathy. I know, little moon, Oriana said, moving to her pack of herbs. We will make a splint. It's too hurt, Theron said. He looked at his hand, at the faint silver scar. It's cold. Theron, no, Oriana said, her voice sharp. We do not use the gift, not ever. It is dangerous, it will draw attention. It's in pain, he insisted, his childish voice holding an alpha's stubbornness. Before she could stop him, he placed his small hand over the bird. Oriana tensed, her eyes darting to the forest. The silver mark on his palm blazed. It was not a soft glow. It was a beacon, a flash of pure, cold moonlight. A wisp of silver energy flowed from his hand into the sparrow. The bird, which had been shuddering, went still. Its broken wings snapped back into place. The light faded. The sparrow chirped, shook its feathers, and took off, flying in a perfect, strong circle above Theron's head before disappearing over the trees. Oriana stared, her heart in her throat. She knew he had a gift. She had seen him mend plants, heal cuts and bruises on himself with a touch. But this was resurrection. This was divine power. Theron, she breathed, pulling him into her arms. You must never do that again. Do you understand me? That light. They will see it. He will see it. Who, mother? The Alpha. The word was poison on her tongue. The one you dream of? The one who makes you sad? Oriana's breath hitched. You, how do you know that? I can feel it, Theron said, placing his hand on her heart. He broke this. A tear traced its way down Oriana's cheek. Yes, little moon. He did. It's okay, Theron said, his ancient eyes meeting hers. I'll fix it. No, my love. Some things can't be fixed. A twig snapped. It was the same sound she'd heard 5 years ago. Oriana was on her feet in an instant, pushing Theron behind her. Her entire body went rigid, her wolf rising to the surface, a low growl rumbling in her chest. A man stood at the edge of the clearing. He wore the leather armor of the Bloodmoon pack, a scout. His eyes were wide, darting from Oriana's fierce, changed face to the small boy hiding behind her legs, the boy with the Alpha's hair. The scout's jaw dropped. He had been tracking a strange energy signature, a flash of power. his eyes fixed on Oriana. Recognition dawned. Oriana? He whispered, his voice cracking. By the goddess. You're alive? Oriana didn't speak. She only watched him. A predator poised to strike, her only thought to protect the child behind her. The scout looked at Theron, then back at her. He saw the resemblance. He saw the truth. He has a child. The scout stammered. The Alpha. He has an heir. Before Oriana could move, before she could throw the sleeping draught she kept on her belt, the scout turned and bolted, shifting mid-stride. A massive brown wolf crashed through the underbrush, running as if the very hounds of hell were on its tail. Running back to Renard. Oriana's blood ran cold. Mother? Theron asked, his small voice trembling. Oriana grabbed their packs. Run, she said, her voice a deadly hiss. We have to run, now. Chapter 6. The Alpha's Downfall. The Bloodmoon pack was rotting from the inside out. It had been 5 years since Renard had cast Oriana out. 5 years since he had bonded with Neris. And it had been 5 years of failure. Neris was a strong Luna, she was a ruthless politician, a skilled fighter, and a cold partner. She managed the pack's patrols, she enforced the laws, and she stood by his side, a perfect granite statue of a Luna. She was also barren. The irony was so bitter, Renard could taste it every morning. He had rejected his true, fated mate, his soul, for being barren, only to be cursed with a chosen Luna who truly was. The pack felt it. The lifeblood was draining away. There had been no new pups born in the Alpha line. The pack's morale was at an all-time low. The connection to their wolves felt thin, muted. Renard himself was a shell. He was a powerful Alpha, his command absolute. But the man inside was a ghost. The mate bond, though he had officially severed it, was not gone. It was a phantom limb, an ache that never, ever subsided. It was a constant cold emptiness in his chest, a reminder of the warmth he had thrown away. He hadn't seen Oriana in his dreams for years. At first, they had been nightmares. Her face, streaked with tears, her eyes wide with betrayal, but then nothing. As if the goddess had shielded her from him completely. He sat in his study, the same study where Alden had warned him, staring at a map. He was supposed to be planning patrols. He was just tracing the lines of the river that led to the deep wilderness. Where did you go, Oriana? Did you die out there? The thought sent a spike of his wolf's grief through him. The doors to the great hall burst open. It was not a knock, it was a slam. Renard was on his feet in an instant, his alpha aura flaring. What is the meaning of this? A scout Corvus staggered into the room. He was covered in mud and burrs, his chest heaving. He looked like he'd seen a god. Alpha, he panted, dropping to one knee. Report, Renard commanded, his voice a low growl. Neris emerged from the adjoining room, her eyes narrowed. I was tracking in the deep woods, Corvus stammered. Near the roaring falls, I felt a blast of power, like nothing I've ever felt. A rogue? Neris snapped. No, Luna, it was light, pure light. Corvus looked up, his eyes meeting Renard's. His next words changed the world. Alpha, I found her, I found Oriana. The air left Renard's lungs. He gripped the desk, his knuckles white. Alive, she was alive. A wild, savage joy warred with his crushing guilt. She is changed, Alpha, Corvus said, his voice awed. She's not the Omega you knew. She's wild, powerful. Where is she? Renard demanded. Why did you not bring her? Because, Corvus hesitated, swallowing hard. Alpha, she's not alone. Renard froze. Neris stepped forward, her face darkening. She has a child. The silence that followed was absolute. Renard felt the blood drain from his face. A child, another's child. The pain was so sharp, so unexpected, he almost buckled. She had found another. A small boy. Corvus rushed on, as if he knew what the Alpha was thinking. Maybe 4 or 5 years old. And Alpha? Corvus looked at him, his face pale with certainty. He has your face. Renard's world tilted. 5 years? My face? Barren? Oh, goddess, Alden was right. My son? Renard whispered. The word felt alien. Impossible, Neris shrieked, her mask of cold control shattering. She was a Barren Omega. It's a trick. A bastard pup she found. He had your eyes, Alpha. Corvus said, his voice shaking. I've never seen eyes like yours except on him. A son. Renard, who had torn his pack and his soul apart for an heir, had an heir. An heir he had exiled. She's a harlot, Nerys screamed. She betrayed you. She ran and took a rogue lover. Silence, Renard roared. The Alpha command slammed Nerys into silence, her mouth snapping shut. He looked at Corvus, his heart hammering a rhythm of terror and a desperate, burning hope. My son. Before he could give the order, before he could howl for his warriors, before he could tear the forest apart to find them. A scream echoed from the village. It was not a scream of injury, it was a scream of pure, abject terror. Renard was moving before he thought, Corvus and Nerys at his heels. He burst out of the great hall into the central square. A crowd was gathered around the infirmary. What is it? Renard bellowed. The crowd parted. One of the pack's healers was on her knees, staring at her own hands. Alpha, she whispered, holding them up. Renard's stomach clenched. Her skin, it was gray, a dead, ashen color, and it was spreading. As they watched, a network of black veins spiderwebbed up her arms. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with terror. And she coughed. A spray of black viscous bile hit the packed earth. It's the plague, a voice rasped from the shadows. Alden, the old elder, looking more frail than ever, emerged from his den. He stared at the healer with ancient, knowing eyes. The plague of the broken fate, Alden whispered, his gaze finding Renard's. It has begun. As if his words were a curse, another wolf in the crowd cried out, clutching his stomach. He doubled over, retching the same black sickness. The pack descended into chaos. Renard looked at the sickness, at the panic, at the black veins on his healer's hands. He looked back at Alden. The prophecy. Only the blood of the true heir can cure it. The child, Oriana's child, his child. He threw his head back and howled, a sound not of an alpha, but of a desperate, damned man. Chapter 7. The Pack's Plague. Chaos was a beast, and it had the Bloodmoon pack by the throat. The plague spread with the speed of a forest fire. It was not a normal sickness. It didn't just attack the body, it attacked the wolf. The first to fall were the healers, as if the curse held a special spite for them. Then, the warriors. The afflicted wolves complained of a coldness, a silence in their minds where their wolves used to be. Then came the gray skin, the black veins, and the suffocating cough that brought up the bile of the earth itself. It was a rot, a spiritual decay made manifest. Renard stood in the infirmary, which had already overflowed into the great hall. Mats were laid out everywhere, covered with the sick and dying. The air was thick with the stench of death and fear. We've tried everything. A frantic healer, one of the few still standing, told him. Wolfsbane, silverweed, prayer, nothing stops it. It's not a poison, Alpha. It's an unmaking. Nerys was pale, standing by the door, her hand over her mouth. Her usual arrogance was gone, replaced by a brittle terror. We should quarantine them, move them to the outer caves. They are our pack, Renard snarled. He knelt by a young warrior, a boy he had trained himself. The boy's eyes were cloudy. Alpha, the warrior rasped, grabbing Renard's arm. His grip was weak. I can't feel him. I can't feel my wolf. It's gone? He dissolved into a fit of black coughing. Renard's heart fractured. This was his fault. His arrogance, his pride. He saw Alden sitting in the corner, tending to a sick pup, wiping its brow with a cool cloth. Renard strode over to him. You knew, Renard said, his voice low and desperate. You knew this would happen? I knew what the prophecy foretold, Alden murmured, not looking up. A plague born of a broken fate. How do I stop it? Renard demanded, grabbing the elder's shoulder. Tell me. Alden looked up, his milky eyes pinning Renard in place. You cannot stop it, Alpha. It can only be cured. How? You know how. The words have haunted you for 5 years, have they not? Only the blood of the true heir can save them. Renard's breath hitched. The boy, Oriana's son. Your son, Alden corrected, his voice firm. The child of the true fated union, the one the goddess chose, the one you cast out. Shame and a wild, terrifying hope warred in Renard's chest. He can heal this? A child? He is not just a child, Renard. He is the first true heir in 4,000 years. He carries the blood of the Alpha, but the power of the goddess's chosen Omega. He is the balance. He is the cure. Renard turned, his mind made up. He would find her. He would find him. He would drag them back if he had to. I will take my warriors, he declared. No, Alden said, his voice stopping Renard cold. You will not. You will not go as an alpha. You will not go as a conqueror. My pack is dying. I will not. You will go as you should have 5 years ago. Alden interrupted, his voice rising with a strength Renard hadn't heard in years. You will go alone. You will go in supplication. You will go as a male, begging his mate for forgiveness. If you go with warriors, she will run. If you go with pride, she will let us all die, and she would be right. The truth of the words hit Renard harder than any physical blow. He couldn't command her. He couldn't force this. He had no right. He looked around at the dying pack, his family, all paying the price for his sin. Corvus, Renard barked. The scout appeared at his side. You will take me to the waterfall, alone. Alpha, it's too dangerous. Now, Corvus. Renard turned back to Alden. The old wolf nodded, a flicker of approval in his dim eyes. Pray, Renard. Pray that she has not learned to hate you as much as you deserve. Renard ignored the sting. He strode from the hall, his purpose clear. He had to find her. He had to face the woman he'd broken. He had to beg the son he had abandoned to save the people who had scorned his mother. Chapter 8. The Heir's Gift. Pack, Oriana whispered, her voice tight with a fear she hadn't felt in years. Hurry, Theron, we have to be gone before they return. She was stuffing dried herbs and smoked meat into their leather packs. Her hands were shaking. She had built a life here, a fortress, and one scout sighting had brought it all tumbling down. Where are we going, Mother? Theron asked. He was not crying. His green eyes were wide and serious, and he held his own small pack. North, she said, to the high mountains, where the snow never melts. It will be hard, but they won't follow us there. They are coming now. Oriana froze. What did you say? I can feel them, Theron said, looking past her toward the waterfall. He's coming, the Alpha. Oriana's blood turned to ice. So soon. He hadn't sent his warriors. He was coming himself. She grabbed her son's hand. We leave now, through the back passage. A sound stopped her. A low, wretched moan. It came from the forest. Mother. Theron whispered, pulling his hand free. It's a trap, Theron. We must go. It's sick, he said, ignoring her. He walked to the edge of the clearing, peering into the woods. Oriana followed, her healer's knife in her hand. Theron, get back. A deer stumbled into the clearing. Oriana gasped. It was covered in the gray rot. Black veins pulsed beneath its hide, and it staggered, its legs buckling. It fell to the ground, its breath coming in wet, ragged gasps. It was the plague. It had spread from the pack. It was poisoning the forest, poisoning her home. Oriana, the healer, instinctively moved forward. She knelt, her knife put away, and pulled herbs from her pouch. Feverfew, yarrow, this might ease its pain. She tried to force a poultice into the deer's mouth, but the animal shuddered and went still. It's not working, Mother, Theron said softly. He was standing right over the animal, his small face a mask of pity. We can't help it, little moon, Oriana said, her voice thick with sorrow. It's too late. We have to go. No, Theron said. His voice was not the voice of a 5-year-old. It was deep, resonant. It was the voice of the goddess's dream. Theron, no, you can't, she hissed, grabbing his arm. He will see. He's almost here. It's in pain, he repeated, his eyes fixed on the deer. He shook off her hand with a strength that startled her. He stepped forward and placed his small bare hand on the deer's flank. The effect was instantaneous. The silver crescent moon mark on his palm blazed to life. It was not a small glow. It was a blinding column of pure white silver light, shooting up into the canopy, scattering the shadows. It was a beacon, a divine flare. The light poured from his hand into the deer. Oriana watched, breathless, as the gray rot receded. The black veins vanished, pulled back into the boy's hand like threads. The deer's hide turned a healthy brown. Its shuddering breaths evened out. The light vanished. Theron pulled his hand back, staggering slightly. He looked pale. The deer blinked, shook its head, and scrambled to its feet. It looked at Theron, a strange, sentient intelligence in its eyes. It bowed its head once, then bounded into the forest, completely healed. Oriana stared at her son. She had known he had a gift. She had not known he was a god. The sheer power of it left her trembling. This was the gift of the true heir. The cure. "They are coming, Mother," Theron said, his voice his own again, small and tired. "They need me." "No," Oriana said, her protective fury returning. "They need your gift. They don't care about you. I will not let him have you." She grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the cave. "Oriana," that voice. She stopped. The sound of it, after 5 years, hit her like a physical blow. It was deeper, rougher, heavy with a pain she recognized. She turned slowly. He stood at the edge of the clearing, just where the scout had been. Alpha Renard. He was not the proud Alpha she remembered. He was haggard. There were lines of grief and exhaustion etched around his mouth. His golden eyes. They weren't burning with pride. They were hollowed by despair. He was alone, and he was unarmed. He stared at her, not as an alpha looking at a rogue, but as a man looking at a ghost. He took in her lean, strong form, the clothes of hide and leaf, the wildness in her eyes. The mate bond, that broken, aching thing, screamed between them. Then his gaze dropped. He saw Theron. Renard's breath left him in a visible, shuddering gasp. He stared at the small boy with his own black hair, his own stubborn chin, and Oriana's vibrant green eyes. He saw his son. "Oriana," he whispered again, the name a prayer. And then his eyes fell to the ground where the deer had been. He saw the patch of dead, rotted grass, and the new vibrant green blades already sprouting where the deer's body had lain. He looked at Theron. He looked at Oriana. He understood. Renard stumbled forward, his alpha pride shattering like glass. He fell to his knees on the damp earth. He sank, not just to his knees, but into a full bow, his forehead touching the ground. "Oriana," he choked, his voice thick with 5 years of unspeakable regret. "Goddess, forgive me, please." Chapter 9, The Broken Plea. Oriana's heart was a stone. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times. In her nightmares, he came with warriors, fire, and chains, tearing her child from her arms. In her bitter daydreams, she was the strong one, striking him down. She had never, ever imagined this. The man who had stood so tall, so cold, so absolute in his rejection, was now prostrate in the mud at her feet, the alpha of the Bloodmoon pack, brought low. Her first instinct was a savage and triumphant joy. Good, suffer as I suffered. But her wolf, the omega he had broken, whimpered. Our mate is in pain, go to him, heal him. She stood frozen, torn between the woman she had become and the wolf she had been. Get up, she said. Her voice was cold, flat, the voice of the mountain stone. Renard raised his head. His golden eyes were shining with unshed tears. The guilt pouring off him was a stench, thicker than the mist of the waterfall. He struggled for words. "I saw the light, the deer. I saw our." He couldn't say the word. He has the gift. He has the goddess's gift, Oriana corrected, her voice sharp. She pushed Theron further behind her. It has nothing to do with you. Oriana, you don't understand, he pleaded, rising slowly to his knees, but no further. He would not stand over her. The pack, it's the plague. I saw the deer, she said, her lip curling. Your sickness is spreading. It's poisoning the forest. It's the curse, he said, his voice cracking. Alden told me, the prophecy, a plague born of a broken fate, my sin. He looked at her, his eyes filled with a self-loathing so profound it startled her. I did this, he whispered. My pride, my fear, I listened to a 4,000-year-old lie. I was a fool. I broke us. I broke my pack. You broke me, she hissed, the word of venom she had held for 5 years. You cast me out. You called me Barren, in front of everyone. I know, he choked, and I've paid for it every single day since. That hall, it is empty. My life, it is empty. Neris, she is truly barren. The goddess cursed me with my own choices. The confession hung in the air. Oriana felt a crack in the stone around her heart. The pack is dying, Renard continued, his desperation raw. Warriors, pups, they're rotting from the inside out. They can't feel their wolves, Oriana. It's a living death. He finally, fully looked at Theron. The boy stared back, not with fear, but with that unnerving, ancient calm. He is the true heir, Renard breathed, the realization dawning fully. The one Alden spoke of. He's the cure. Renard's gaze snapped back to Oriana. The plea was naked. Please, he begged. I am not asking for me. I deserve to die. I deserve to watch my pack crumble. But they don't. The pups, the families, they are innocent. They believed in their alpha, and their alpha failed them. He bowed his head again. Please, Oriana, save them. Let him save them. I will give you anything. My life, my rank, anything. Just please don't let them die because of me. Oriana looked at the man who was her mate, the man who was her tormentor, the father of her child. She had dreamed of his regret. Now, faced with it, she found it tasted like ash. It didn't heal her. It didn't erase the 5 years of solitude, of terror, of birthing her son alone on a stone floor. Her voice was ice. You cast me out, she said, her voice echoing in the clearing. You called me barren, you shunned me. This pack, they are not my pack. They watched you do it. They cheered when you chose another. She pulled Theron close, her hand resting on his head. This child, she said, her voice lethal, is not yours. He is not your heir. He is the goddess's. And you are not worthy to speak his name. Renard flinched as if she had struck him. The hope in his eyes died, replaced by the hollow despair she remembered. He had come here to beg, and she had given him the rejection he deserved. Before he could speak, a new sound cut through the woods. Shouts, crashing. Alpha, we tracked you. Neris. She burst into the clearing, followed by 4 of Renard's largest warriors. She was in full leathers, a sword at her hip. Her eyes, frantic and red-rimmed, landed on Oriana, then on Theron. Her face, already pale with fear, contorted into a mask of pure vitriolic rage. There she is, Neris shrieked, pointing. The Omega harlot and her bastard. Chapter 10. The Confrontation. Neris, no, Renard roared, scrambling to his feet. He moved to stand between his warriors and Oriana. Stand down, all of you. This is not a hunt. She's a witch, Neris screamed, her terror making her reckless. She was terrified of the plague, and she saw her solution. She brought this curse on us and that thing. She pointed a trembling finger at Theron. It's unnatural. The warriors fanned out, their hands on their weapons. They looked confused, torn between their alpha's command and his Luna's. I said stand down. Renard's alpha voice cracked like a whip. The warriors froze, wincing. Don't listen to him, Neris shrieked, her eyes wild. He's enchanted. She's fooled him. He knelt to her. Seize the child, Renard. Use him to heal us and then we can dispose of them both. The raw, ugly truth of her ambition hung in the air. Oriana's blood ran cold. She pushed Theron behind her, drawing her long, sharp healer's knife. She was not the Omega they remembered. She would kill them all before they touched her son. You will not touch him, Oriana hissed, her voice a low, feral growl that surprised even herself. You think you can stop us, Omega? Neris sneered, though she kept her distance. You're nothing. You were always nothing. Renard, Oriana said, her eyes locked on her mate. Get your bitch under control, or I will. The insult, so unlike the Oriana he knew, stunned Renard. But Neris exploded. Insolent pup, she screamed, lunging. But she wasn't lunging for Oriana. She was lunging for the boy. Theron, Oriana screamed. No, Renard bellowed, moving to intercept. They were too slow. Neris's hand, fingers clawed, was inches from Theron's face. And then, everything stopped. The air in the clearing didn't just grow cold, it froze. A pressure descended, so immense that the warriors dropped to their knees. The sound of the waterfall muffled as if it were miles away. Theron, the 5-year-old boy, stepped out from behind his mother. He looked at Neris. His green eyes were no longer the eyes of a child. They were glowing, a pure, blinding silver light. You, he said. His voice was not his own. It was a chorus of 1,000 voices, ancient and vast. It was the voice of the goddess. You are the Barren one. Neris froze, her hand still outstretched, her body rigid with a new divine terror. Your soul is sick, not just your body. What is this? One of the warriors stammered, his face ashen. Insolent pup, Neris managed to rasp, her rage fighting her fear. She made one last fatal mistake. She shoved him. Her hand connected with Theron's shoulder. For a beat, nothing happened. Then a shockwave of pure silver energy erupted from the boy. It was not an attack. It was a rejection. The blast threw Neris backward 10 feet. She slammed into a tree and crumpled to the ground, unconscious. The 4 warriors were thrown back with her, skidding through the mud, their weapons scattering. Renard, who had been shielded by Oriana, stared. The clearing was silent again, the pressure vanished. Theron turned, his eyes fading back to their normal green. He looked pale, drained, and he stumbled. Oriana caught him, her heart hammering against her ribs. She held her son, who had just humbled an alpha's guard with a single thought. Renard looked at the unconscious Luna. He looked at his terrified, groaning warriors. He looked at the small boy in Oriana's arms, who was now trembling. And he looked at Oriana. Her face was a mask of terror and fierce, undeniable pride. All his assumptions, all his traditions, all his 4,000-year-old justifications turned to dust. This was not just an Omega and a bastard. This was the divine Luna and the true heir. And he, the Alpha, was the least powerful person in the clearing. Oriana? He said, his voice raw. He took a step. She flinched, holding Theron tighter. He stopped, his hand half raised. They are dying, he whispered, his last shred of pride gone. Our pack. Please, I was wrong about everything. Please don't let them pay for my sin. Oriana looked at her son, who was watching his father with those ancient, knowing eyes. Theron reached out a small hand and placed it on her cheek. It's okay, Mother, he whispered, his voice his own. We have to. It's why I'm here. Oriana closed her eyes. Her choice was gone. It had never been her choice. It was destiny. She looked at Renard, her eyes hard. We will come, she said. Renard's body sagged in relief. Not for you, she snapped. For them. For the innocent ones your arrogance has doomed. And when it is done, we are leaving. For good. Renard just nodded, his throat too tight to speak. Thank you. Oriana gave one last disgusted look at the groaning Neris. You'd better carry your Luna, she's pathetic. She adjusted Theron on her hip and, without a backward glance, began the long walk back to the pack village that had cast her out. Chapter 11, The Goddess's Test. The walk back was a funeral march. Renard walked ahead, his unconscious Luna slung over his shoulder in a humiliating parody of a mated carry. The 4 warriors, humbled and terrified, followed him, casting fearful glances back at Oriana. Oriana walked behind them, Theron holding her hand. She was no longer their Omega. She was their savior, and they knew it. The power dynamic had been shattered, and a new one was being forged in fire and plague. When they reached the village, the scene was worse than Renard had described. The square was a graveyard. Dozens of wolves lay on mats, their bodies covered in the gray rot. The stench of sickness was overpowering. The few who were still healthy were weeping, their faces masks of despair. When they saw Renard, a few cried out. But then they saw Oriana. A hush fell. They stared. The rejected Omega, the barren one, alive. And then they saw the child. Alden emerged from the great hall, leaning heavily on his staff. He looked as if he had aged a decade. When he saw them, he smiled, a faint, papery thin expression. He didn't look at Renard. He looked at Theron. The old elder slowly, painfully bowed. Welcome, true heir, he rasped. The pack gasped. Theron, unfazed, walked past Alden into the great hall, which now served as a hospice. Oriana and Renard followed. It was a hall of the dead. Dozens lay in rows. Mother, Theron said, his voice quiet. He let go of her hand and walked to the nearest mat, where a young she-wolf, barely an adult, was shuddering. Oriana's healer instincts took over. Theron, wait, you're drained. It's all right, he said. He placed his hand on her forehead. The silver crescent moon on his palm flared. The she-wolf gasped as the light flowed into her. The gray receded from her skin. The black veins vanished. Color rushed back to her cheeks. She took a deep, clear breath and her eyes flew open, bright and healthy. I can feel her, she whispered, tears streaming. My wolf. She's back? A wave of hope, so powerful it was almost a physical force, swept the room. Theron moved to the next one, and the next. He was a beacon of silver light, moving through the hall of shadows. With every touch, a life was restored. The curse was undone. But Oriana watched with growing concern. With every healing, Theron grew paler. His small shoulders slumped. He was healing dozens, taking the spiritual rot into himself and letting the goddess's light purify it. But the cost was immense. He healed Alden, who wept and kissed his hand. He healed the warriors who had come to capture him. He healed everyone. Until there was only one left. Neris. She had been laid on a mat, her consciousness returned. The plague had taken her fast. She was covered in the gray rot, her beautiful red hair matted with black sweat. She was dying. She looked at Theron, her eyes wide with terror and, finally, comprehension. Please, she wheezed, her voice a dying rattle. I was wrong. Please, I don't want to die. Theron looked at her. He was swaying on his feet, his energy almost gone. He looked at his mother. I can't, Mother, he whispered, his voice trembling. I'm too tired. Theron. Oriana knelt, her heart breaking. Her sickness is too deep, he panted. It's not just her body, it's her soul. It's black. Neris began to sob, a wretched, desperate sound. Oriana, the healer, knew what had to be done. He couldn't take this much darkness alone. He needed a conduit, a partner. I can help, Oriana said, her voice firm. My healing, it's different. But if I join with you, I can help channel the power. She placed her hand over Theron's. Together. They reached for Neris, but Theron shook his head. Not enough. Still too much. This was it, the goddess's final test. Oriana looked up at Renard, who was watching, his face a mask of agony. Renard, Oriana said. He looked at her, shocked she had used his name. He needs an anchor, she said, her voice all healer, all business, a life force to draw from. He needs his father. Renard's eyes filled with tears. He stepped forward without hesitation. Anything. Place your hand over mine, she commanded. Renard knelt, his body trembling. He placed his large, scarred hand over Oriana's, which was over Theron's. Father, mother, and son. The true, fated triad. Now, Theron whispered. The three of them touched Neris. The explosion of light was blinding. It was not just Theron's silver light. It was Oriana's gentle green healing aura and Renard's fierce golden alpha power, all merging. The power didn't just flow into Neris, it flowed between them. Oriana gasped as she felt Renard's power, his life, his regret, his deep, unending love for her. A love he had denied and tried to kill. It flowed into her, healing the last scar on her soul. Renard cried out as he felt her 5 years of pain, her solitude, her fierce love for their son. It washed over him, cleansing his guilt, offering an absolution he had never dreamed he'd receive. The broken mate bond between them didn't just heal, it reforged. It snapped back into place, not as the simple, fated bond of before, but as a new, golden, divine connection. Tested by fire, blessed by the goddess, and sealed by their child. The light flared, filling the great hall, blasting out the windows, sweeping over the entire village. When it faded, they were all panting. Neris was breathing deeply, her skin clear, her eyes closed in a peaceful, natural sleep. She was cured. Theron collapsed, but Renard caught him, pulling his son into his arms for the first time. Oriana and Renard looked at each other, their hands still touching. The bond between them was a living, breathing thing. Whole, powerful, permanent. The goddess had given her test, and they had passed. Chapter 12, Rise of the True Luna. The great hall was silent, but this was not the silence of fear. It was the silence of awe. The pack, healed and whole, stood assembled. Their skin was clear, their eyes bright. They could feel their wolves, purring, vibrant, and alive, for the first time in years. They stared at the family of 3 standing before the moonstone. Renard held a sleeping Theron in his arms, the boy's head tucked against his father's shoulder. Oriana stood beside him, not as a healer, not as an omega, but as a queen. The wildness of the forest still clung to her, but it was now overlaid with a silver aura of divine power. She was terrifying, and she was beautiful. Neris, her face scrubbed clean of plague and pride, stepped forward. She was humbled, broken. She bowed, low, to Oriana. "I am no Luna," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I was a fool, blinded by ambition and fear. I renounced my claim." She unclaced the simple copper Luna's torque from her neck and placed it on the floor between them. She backed away, taking her place in the crowd, no longer a rival, but just another wolf. The path was clear. Renard turned to Oriana. His golden eyes were no longer hollow. They were full of love, crushing regret, and a devotion that was absolute. He was finally the alpha he was meant to be. He did not command, he did not declare. In front of the entire pack, the one that had witnessed her shame, Alpha Renard knelt. He sank to one knee, lowering his son slightly as he bowed his head to her. It was the ultimate act of submission, an alpha bowing to an omega. "Oriana," he said, his voice thick but carrying through the hall. "I rejected you in ignorance. I was a proud, stupid fool who listened to a dead tradition instead of his own soul." He looked up at her, his heart in his eyes. "My pack, my life, is nothing without you. I have been living in a wasteland of my own making. You are my true mate. You are the goddess's chosen. You are the mother of our pack's savior." He took her hand, the one that was not scarred, the one that healed. "I am not worthy," he whispered. "I know that. I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn what I threw away. But my people, our people, need their true Luna. Will you forgive me?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Will you take your place at my side?" Oriana looked at the man on his knees. She looked at the child in his arms, her child, their child, sleeping peacefully, his work done. She looked at the pack, their faces filled with hope and reverence. The last sliver of ice around her heart melted away. She was not the Omega he had rejected. She was the Luna who had returned. She squeezed his hand. "Get up, Renard." He looked up, his breath catching. "I accept," she said, her voice ringing with a new, quiet authority. A collective sigh of joy rippled through the pack. Renard rose, a disbelieving, radiant smile transforming his harsh features. He handed Theron to a tearful Alden, who accepted the boy as if he were a holy relic. Renard turned back to his mate. "Then let it be as the goddess intended," he said. He leaned in front of everyone, he marked her. It was not the painful, tearing bite of a political alliance. It was a claiming, a sealing, a promise. Oriana gasped as his power flowed into her, but it was met by her own. The mark on her neck glowed, not red with blood, but a brilliant, shining silver, a perfect mirror of the crescent moon on her son's hand. The entire pack howled. It was not the formal howl of a gathering. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated joy. The curse was broken. The pack was whole. The true Luna had risen. Renard pulled her close, his forehead pressed against hers, his hands tangled in her wild hair. He breathed her in, the scent of lavender and sage, the scent of home. He called her Barren, Oriana thought, her eyes closing as she felt her mate's and her son's love wrap around her. He cast her out. She felt Renard's lips on hers, a kiss that was both an apology and a vow. But fate, she mused, her heart finally, completely at peace. Fate had other plans.